Hi, I'm Linda Mechner, and welcome to Why Eating Healthy is Not Enough. I'm here today with Heather and Damien Dubé, who are the co-founders of E3 Energy Evolved. Welcome, Heather and Damien. I'm so happy to have you here. And I always like to start by just asking your personal stories, because I think the personal stories are as interesting and as educational as anything. So yeah, how did you get into this?
So thank you, first of all, for
Thank you.
having us. We're grateful to be here, and we love your topic. It's so important. So Jamie and I have actually started about 3 decades ago, early on in exercise physiology and nutrition. We had both done some work in natural competitive athletics and had a passion for nutrition from a young age. It's also what brought us together and how we met in our own paths in our 20s. We're now 46 and 47. So, and, fast forward in life, we got married, and about 6 months after our wedding, we had some credentials by this point in exercise physiology and nutrition, but I started to have some different experience of my health related to stress, which I didn't know at the time. And I was working in marketing, actually in the nutrition marketing industry, in the agriculture industry, not far from you in Sacramento. And, all of a sudden I just had a lot of things where I fell off. I didn't feel like going to train anymore, which was really unusual for me because we were competitive athletes. So going to the gym was like, nothing I ever had to force within myself. And I just didn't feel like myself. I spent about 2 years going to doctors to try to find answers on the medical side, and got really nowhere. And unfortunately, my health progressed and got worse, much significantly worse during that time, where all of a sudden now my hair is falling out, my eyes are swollen shut, I have eczema all over my face, I got rashes all, on my body, I can't really get out of bed, and now I'm not knowing at this point I'm in chronic fatigue and full-blown Hashimoto's disease, and still didn't have a diagnosis. So I got told everything like a lot of people, you're fine, go home, you just have allergies, you're just tired, it's aging, and yet my body was screaming symptomatically from the inside out at that point. And my husband was finally like, we really need to do something about this. So I decided to make a highly conscious change in my life. And I left my career in marketing of 13 years at that point in nutrition and decided to make healing my job. And then I decided that if I couldn't get the human life figured out, then really nothing else mattered. And I'm blessed with a husband that supported me, because we've always had health at the foundation of everything we decide and do in our life. And so I started to try to find answers locally, wasn't really getting answers even from the natural medicine community. Nobody was really looking at me holistically enough or powerfully enough to turn the card around, essentially, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I would go to natural medicine doctors and kind of get like, it was just too small, if you will. And I don't have a lot of time to go into that, but, and so I started to fly around and leave my area and try to, which gets expensive pretty quickly, and try to find help from more innovative, natural professionals. Started to make a little bit of headway that way, and had to come back to California and do some treatment. And I basically went back to school to become a functional nutritionist at the time to finish my self-healing. And as we went through that journey together, it was really God's kick off the fence, if you will, into what we should have always been doing, because we already had education in psychology and exercise physiology and nutrition. We just weren't using it. So it was kind of this big awakening into, wow, this level of healing is possible with nutrition, and people need to know this. And so that became our entry point into, we kind of just looked at each other, because we're people of service in our hearts, and said, we have a responsibility to bring this level of healing forth to other people, so they are informed and can make, a conscious choice. Because for us, we went through a lot of challenge during that time. When you get through really advanced chronic fatigue, like I had to leave my job. We went through a medical bankruptcy, actually, from the costs of fixing errors of the misdiagnosis and the mistreatment of my condition for so long, because I got so progressed. And we also made a conscious choice to heal naturally. I did not use thyroid medication or any form of medication. That was really important to me and to us. And when you're in a very aggressive disease or dis-ease state that's threatening your life at the point that it was for me, you have to get more powerful than that disease in your body with what you're pouring in to correct it. And so, you know, $40,000, it turned into 80 on credit while I was out of work. The economy bottomed out in 2009 at the same time this was happening. My husband loses his job not once, but 3 times. We lose our house, we lose a car. So it was like coming in waves. And we just had to have the faith to keep stepping forward very consciously and not giving up on healing, and come through that other side reborn as new people.
Right. You know, I think that little piece, that faith to go all in for your health is, I mean, it's so incredible that you made that conscious choice to do that. I think, you know, one of the mistakes I see people make is not only do they not invest in themselves to the point that they can, but they don't even want to pay for something or go do something that's not covered by their insurance, because they figure they're paying for insurance and they're not going to pay any more for health. Like they, you know, if it costs $100, it's too much.
Please listen to Linda on that, because yes, faith is the highest. I can share it because I'm an energy medicine practitioner also, with a 3.5-year credential in that. I don't just talk about energy. I have credentials in that to teach it to our people. And so faith is the highest energy vibration, period. And I know now, retroactively, looking back 11 years, because we were consciously really stepping forward in that united team force. And I'm not saying that because I know how women sometimes will hear this. You can do this on yourself, whether you're being supported by your partner or not. Okay, so I just want to I know we don't have a lot of time to go into that. It is the way I looked at when I was so sick and I was having literally a near-death experience. I knew consciously, even before I had a diagnosis, that I was going to die if I didn't, like literally the lights were shutting off. The life was coming out. The chi, the life force, you know, it was going. And I knew that my body was attacking itself and having a serious fight for its life. It's conservation. Any form of stress that I was exposed to would throw my symptoms into an all-out tailspin, and I would be out for like a week, and I couldn't handle. I couldn't function. I couldn't think. And so when you're doing competitive athletics, like we did for a long time up to that point, you have a very deep connection from mind to the body. You're listening. You intuitively know. You're watching. If things get louder, you're measuring. You know. And so I knew that's what was happening. And that point was a huge pivot. Like a lot of people, and we've been on interviews before, to be honest, where I've been kicked off by a wellness person who was like, well, no one wants to talk about that because that's not selling. Well, I don't care, because this is why people are dying. Okay, needlessly from a lot of diseases, not just thyroid and autoimmune like we talk about, but a lot, is that point in our lives at 32, I have a very long history of spiritual counseling in my family. I have family members that started a worldwide church. Like faith was something that was really important to us. But, you know, at that point, we didn't live fully from the words. And what I mean is we had to make a choice that our gifts of you know, life, marriage, family, these things are given to us in a spiritual way. Whatever your source is, it doesn't matter. There's no, you know what I mean? But they're given to us as gifts. And if we can't put those gifts as a higher level of commitment in our life through our energy, and money is just a form of energy, then we are living out the reality that we are creating for ourselves. I had to consciously step back and say, how did I invite this disease process into my life? And it was big period of spiritual self-reflection, psychological self-reflection, energetic self-reflection, and physical self-reflection. Right. So,
yeah, I'm just going to say, and I have to raise my hand in order to get a word in. Yeah, so, you know, faith isn't just saying, you know, I have faith in God or whomever, so he's going to help get me through this, right? Faith is actually...
It's a state of being.
I got the
Oh, okay, sorry.
Faith is actually taking that step, right? Taking that step off that cliff when there's no visible net below you, right? Jumping off and knowing that whatever, that's the right path to go. Faith is sometimes leaving your job like Heather did without that safety net, without knowing what the hell's going to happen, or investing in yourself, even though the finances aren't there right now, sometimes that's what it takes, or just plowing through and you have to put forth the effort. You have to, it's not just saying I have faith, it's much bigger than that.
Yeah, and in all seriousness, I have to tell you, as practitioners, it's heart-wrenching. I've had to do a lot of work as a practitioner in my own skills in energy medicine to be able to deal with the conversations that we have to have sometimes. We've counseled couples and they've literally decided to divorce on the phone because the wife has a thyroid disease and now it is so advanced. The husband hasn't been here before. There's so much resentment. There's all these things. We can sit here and we want those things to be easy to heal, but we have to remember that disease has layers of implication on all the gifts in our lives if we don't take it seriously. We had to even look at how we were communicating to each other at that time. There were a lot of things that we really reflected on and were willing to shift in order to welcome healing in and more healing in continually. So
I just love the way you have that multi-layered, I don't even want to say approach. It's a philosophy. Yeah. Like health is something that happens on all levels, and you can't just pick one or two levels to work on because it's too much to look at all of it. And I love that.
I don't want to overwhelm listeners because people then they'll hear that and go, oh my God, they're like, oh, I'm just going to give up now. But you have to understand, like, people that you're, like you, like us, like people that have done it, like we've been doing that, like we've been living from health for since we were 17. So 3 decades of really committed approach to health. And it's just been getting more expanded and more expanded as we've expanded our education and expanded our implementation and our research and our embodiment of our practice. But it's, the journey starts with one single step, right? The quote from Lao Tzu, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but it's that there's an entry point. The physical disease is the knock on the door. And yes, when we're physically unwell, we, at least we believe in and teach because we see that transformation happens in a very intentional order. We start with the physical, we flood the body with what it needs. We assess and think about where we're coming, and then as the healing starts to happen, we can go into self-reflection or self-assessment of the mind, what's happening psychologically, because you've got that gut to brain connection. So you flood with the physical, the healing begins to rise up from the gut to the mind, opens the door for them to be open to more, oh, okay, now I'm becoming more intuitive, my energy's healing, I feel better, so they can feel the mind-body connection becomes stronger, they can start to feel more and sense more, that trust in oneself starts to become reborn, because really the intuition is deep in this whole conversation. And then that moves us to the spiritual. Some people will never go all the way to the spiritual or the energetic realm in their healing journey, and that's okay. Everybody's individual. So there's an intentional way that it usually happens. Yes.
Right. And I think in a lot of ways, healing is so much easier than it used to be. I mean, back in the day that you were starting to deal with this, I mean, certainly my health journey started 30 years ago, and but now there's so much more knowledge and it's so much more available, and it's so easy to find the stories and the examples of people who took that road, that worked for it.
There's also so many more inhibitors too, right?
Well, there's that too, but
the positive also a huge negative, right? The stress that we have today as opposed to 30, 40 years ago, that's why so many more people are so sick today relative to decades ago,
right.
So we have a lot more resources and knowledge and everything like that, but we're up against a lot bigger.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point too, because it is a little more, it's a lot more complicated to be healthy now, but if you really know where to look, the resources are there, the knowledge is there in a way that it didn't used to be. I mean, and we're still, compared to what we will know in 10 or 20 years, we're still babies, but.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say to that too is, and I agree with you. However, when we're looking at Dr. Google, right? Everybody's on Google, right? And anybody can post anything, whether they have credentials or not, whether they know what the heck they're talking about or not, right? So you have the average person that's not feeling well, has all these different symptoms that are searching their symptoms,
Yeah.
and then you have somebody
sharing.
telling them that, you know, oh, celery juice is the way you're going to end all your problems. Well, that's not the case, you know. So there's a lot of people that don't have the actual background giving information, right? That the average person can't really decipher, especially for themselves, you know. And that's what's frustrating as heck for us.
Maybe helpful, but the thing is to understand, like, and this is for philosophically for us, some way we've always operated, because again, when we started it, it's competitive athletes before my experience with Hashimoto's disease and you know, all that issue with my chronic fatigue and stuff is, you know, I'll give you this example, like in a context, when you want an athletic coach that's going to get you to a goal at a high performance level, that's going to take you years to get to, and a multi-approach to the body, you're not going to go to a coach that's doing it now, that's never produced a team athlete ever that has the outcomes that you're going after, and put all the time and money in with that person so that you can not get to where you want to go 4 years on stage if you're going to try, if your intention and your goal is to compete. So take that same philosophy. That's the way we look at it is, you know, the thing that people discount, that no matter who you're learning from education wise, you need to make sure that that person, what makes a leader is showing embodied leadership results in themselves as well as other human bodies. And that should be the first thing. And then the second thing they should have is credentials. They should show what we call a lifer, someone that's, you know, really committed to their education, to learning, to, and then being able to take that learning and change it into results, like, because information isn't transformation.
Right.
And we want healing as transformation. We have to be able to take that information and make it into a healed whole human being.
Right. Right. And so I know that in your work, you take a 360 approach to healing. Do you want to explain a bit about what the 360 approach is?
Well, essentially it's E3 Energy Evolved. So it was kind of like when I was going through this experience, and I love that you brought up like you guys were chatting about the whole, you know, that, because there was no social media when I was but I will tell you, like, I'm probably the last person that would go on social media looking for it. I did go to Dr. Google because I was searching my symptoms, right? Because when you don't have a diagnosis, what do? You start, you know, viciously searching rashes and all these things. It wasn't what was helpful. What was helpful was stepping into energy, stepping in faith. The first decision I made was an energetic commitment to up-level my life as a commitment, right, above money. And that was walking into my job and walking out, because I knew that environment was producing so much stress, because it was at that point a very unethical things were going on.
Above relationships too.
That was making me sicker.
Not our relationship, but like relationship with like friends and things like that, you know, where, you know, you have to focus on yourself, you know, and everything else has to kind of be put aside for the time being.
And there was this surrender in that moment when I said, you know what, I've put 13 years into this career, but if I die, who am I going to, you know, how am I going to do it? How am I going to be good for anybody? Not going to be making money, not going to be being able to help pay a mortgage in my house. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to be here. I'm already not here. And that moment when I shifted into that, realizing what was happening is my physical body was literally disintegrating around me. And our message is don't let it get that bad, right? I mean, I was fighting for it. I was scratching, crawling for the answers for like 2 years, you know, and I know now that God had to take me into that valley for a reason. So my empathy would expand exponentially for what it felt like to be that out of control. And just spinning physically and mentally and spiritually, so that I would be able to be of counsel, right? Of good counsel to people as a practitioner. But that was when E3 Energy Evolved came through. It's not something that I created. It was channeled through me in that awakening, into that conscious stepping up into healing at a higher level. When I surrendered my career, my decision that money had to be more important, my idea that I had to perform, I had to, you know, have this great career, and say, you know what? Okay, I created that. Guess what? I can create it again. If I don't put this first, it's not going to matter. And so when I made healing first, then all of the answers started to come. When I started to, you know, be in faith and be more energetic and be more spiritual about my approach, and realize that I had to come from this as a spiritual commitment to being well. Like that's a spiritual commitment to the gift of life that we're given. So I really wanted to get better. And as that came through, I started to realize, okay, we used to think about energy as athletes as like metabolism, right? That's the common thing. It's eating a fairly sports nutrition way and, making sure that your metabolism is high and you're lean and blah, blah, blah. And I realized in that moment, oh my God, no, it's not. Energy is like, we are energy. It's chi, it's life force. It's the ability of the body to be in homeostasis, to be free of any dis-ease. So everything's functioning in a balanced, healthy, thriving way. And then I knew that if I was going to get to that level of experiencing myself, that I was going to have to look at energy from a higher, more powerful, more comprehensive and bio-individualized perspective. And so that was when E3 Energy Evolved came through me. And what it means, essentially, there's 3 levels of energy that we need to tap if we're going to advance our self-healing at a more powerful level. And that is your energy in and your energy out and your energy environment. And underneath all of those things are very specific things, but we want to approach them in a very strategic order. So like, for example, I know people will get really caught up in essential oils and all these things. And that's great. But if you're not going to change your food, if you're not going to change what you're pouring into your body, because bottom line, when you're sick, your nutrients are your most powerful tool. They are absolutely the entry point to powerful healing. We believe in bio-individualized nutrition, which means we test the body to find out what that unique person's nutritional map to healing looks like. And that is really where you need to begin. And then you go through those things in a very, I always say like right steps, right time, right order, right percentages. Those things matter if we're going to be strategic about healing. So you'll see the same person who's, I'm doing essential oils and 3 decades later, they're doing essential oils. And our clients in 12 to 24 weeks are walking away off thyroid medications, off antidepressants, off sleep medications. So those kinds of philosophies of being strategic about right steps, right time, right order to get to a very intentional goal came from our pre-life in athletics. And when I had to heal, we were like, why don't we take these best practices in? Because, an Olympic athlete can't do something for 3 decades and hope they get there. They need to know that on competition day, they're going to be ready and they're ready to win. And that's the kind of way that we approach what we do. So when we're looking at energy, we're looking at energy in, energy out, energy environment of that bio-individual person, but in a very strategic way, in a very intentional way, and the percentage of the way those things matter to produce healing in fast, effective timeframes is part of the equation.
Yeah, I just love that approach. I can tell you have a very A-type personality. It's like, there's a problem, I am going to fix it.
Doesn't everybody with thyroid disease and autoimmune disease?
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's this real soft spiritual part that walks in faith. And I just love that. It's such a beautiful mix.
Yeah. And that is part of the energetic conversation of healing. It's that there are masculine and feminine energies within us, in every one of us, regardless of gender. And even with thyroid and autoimmunity, oftentimes these things are out of balance, or we'll commonly be treating and working with women who are heavy masculine energy, but they're not grounded, they're not in touch, they're too up in the mind. So there's all these areas of energies that we work in, but that's like kind of complementary to what we do in the areas of science and the nutrition, which is also pivotably important if someone is in a physical imbalance with thyroid and autoimmunity. So but yes, there's space, having space for both parts of ourselves like that is very, very, very important in the walk of healing, for sure. What you just touched on, the masculine and the feminine, divine, being more in balance and more present.
Yeah, I think, in my experience, where people's biggest energy drains, and I know that for myself, I hear it from clients all the time, where they feel most drained is with their own expectations of themselves, the demands that may not exist anywhere except in their own mind, or the ideas that they can't have what they truly want, or they have to do what they truly don't want to do. It's all this stuff that it sucks the life out of us, literally.
Turn off the news, turn off social media, turn off reality TV, turn off most of Hollywood, and there's this, you just cut off the source of what's creating that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think there's also, I will say, it was very much a blessing from God that my first part of my education, my undergraduate degree, was in psychology. And that was always a passion for me, how we use the mind to be successful in whatever we're setting out to do. Motivational cognition and neuropsychology were my most favorite areas, but I took that into my life. It's part of why I ended up in marketing and nutrition, because I put design and psychology together. But I also used those tools when I was an athlete, and I use those tools absolutely in my healing. And so I think you hit on something really, really important, because it's the glasses that I was seeing the world through up until the age of 32 that were partially contributing to the stressors that I was having. And so it's so easy, look, I believe me, I went through a whole period where I had to go through personal work to release the anger at the physicians and the doctors who misdiagnosed and mistreated me, because I lost a lot. Like, we didn't get to become parents. We lost a decade of our life to that illness. So it wasn't just the year and a half it took to be all in, like leaving a job, working on the healing to get corrected. Then it was years of repairing all the things that got missed, being years behind on our taxes, losing our house, and the financial repercussions. Like, we couldn't even come above that for a decade. We still do things now. I'm talking to you 11 years later. I mean, I will get to shred my bankruptcy paperwork in less than a month, and I am counting the days, because that is the last thing that's a piece of energy in my space from a life that's no longer our truth, right? And people don't understand that about illness. It can get big, it can get aggressive, it can get so loud in your life that you have no choice but to deal with it, and deal with it powerfully, and put other things aside. And it can be extremely disruptive. But in that coming out of that, I had to self-reflect. I had to go through this assessment. It was very all in. It wasn't just the physical. I went through everything. I went through the nutrition. I went through my house. I changed my products. Like, I changed my job. I looked at, I was going to a job that I didn't really, my soul wanted to be somewhere else. And it knew it. And we want to compartmentalize that. We want to say, it's so easy, I'll just go collect a check because I've got a 401k. But ultimately, for a good time, your soul is so powerful. It knows better than the body and mind. And it knew energetically it didn't want to be there. Part of why I was breaking down was because of it. Not all of it, but it was part. And so I had to really look at everything. And that mind part was part of it. I am a type A perfectionist, take it to the nth level kind of person. And that worked out in the healing, though, because being that all in person was necessary at that point to win the battle and to love it powerfully. So,
but at the same time, and you touched on that earlier about type A, and I think, I would say that probably the majority of women that come to us are type A.
Yeah,
they're high drivers, they're hyper focused on what they need to do and so on.
Overuse the mind.
And they overuse the mind. And that kind of thing, it is a superpower, right? I mean, it's what allows you to excel at what you're doing and what you're good at, but if not kept in check, it can be your demise as well, and I think that's a big thing that we need to do, is we need to kind of break down that type A mentality in order to open that window, right? And sometimes we will focus on that. We'll focus on breaking down that I need to know, I need to do, I need, that planning and so on and so forth, and just kind of like living in the moment, right? And allowing things to just be what they are at that time. And that will, over time, be what it's going to be. There's
a beautiful quote by Picasso that came into my life at that time. It's, every act of creation is first an act of destruction. And in consciousness and energy medicine, we talk about energetically, we don't just go upwards in this like vertical way. There's this cyclical nature of the way that we evolve or we become conscious. And healing is just an awakening. That's what it is. The healing is really the knock on the door. And I had to let go of the parts of me that were creating dis-ease, that were creating stress. That's not that's not to say I'm not that person. Like, I'm not just sitting, like, you know, meditating every day. But what it is, I had to learn how to master them to get balance so they weren't welcoming disease into my life. And that's the difference. That healing gave me the opportunity to come into more of energy psychology and energy medicine on top of the nutrition and the changes that I had to make as a practitioner, so I could learn how can I welcome more balance energetically into my life. Because to your point, the mind is very much part of it, because you can't disconnect this whole thing. It's always working all together, you know?
Yeah, you know, and just to bring it back to, you know, the focus of this whole summit is why eating healthy is not enough. And so we've been talking, I don't know, probably 30 minutes. And, you know, when you really get to the heart of what health is, right? It is about the food. You can't be healthy without healthy food.
Yeah.
But the levels of healing happen on so many different levels. And, you know, it really underscores the point that healthy food is not enough. It's so much more, so much deeper. And if there's one thing that I would want our viewers to take away from this, is that healing is a multifaceted thing, and there's no straight and narrow approach. I mean, if somebody's trying to sell a straight and narrow approach, run.
Yeah, like a one size fits all. Yeah, we don't ultimately. I mean, 8 or 9 years after my physical healing, I was doing work to energetically heal my trauma from childhood. Like, I mean, there's just so much. Healing is, we go backwards to go forwards, and you don't have to take it to that level. It's personal for everybody. There's no judgment here. It's like whatever space you want to allow for in your life, you can allow for in your life. We just want people to know that healing naturally from thyroid and autoimmune disease is possible. I never use medications. We're not advising legally, we can't advise it, but most people don't even know that that's possible. They don't even believe it's possible, you know, because they're just being told I have to live on thyroid medications all my life, or I just have to take all these, you know, or I'm depressed, or no, actually a lot of times we're just our bodies are so deficient, and they're so lacking in what we're giving to them that they can't even operate in an efficient and thriving way for us. But to your point on that last thing, Linda, I'll add that, again, I don't want people to get overwhelmed, but I definitely believe, and we teach that you know, like bioindividualized nutrition, like from a flooding perspective, is really the entry point where you start. And people do need to, we often see, which I'm sure you see and agree, is like, you have to be really committed to that, and you have to be willing to make those changes, both in your food and supplements. And I was a person, because we have background in athletics, we were already living with a certain level of commitment to that. I was not afraid to take on more supplements. I've been taking supplements since I remember. When I met this guy and we moved in together, he told me he didn't read much, and I went through, I think, like 4 or 5 binders of all his supplement research, like, you know, that he'd been doing. So, like,
oh my goodness,
something that nutrients is a powerful way we can create change, and we can access change energetically,
absolutely,
and physically. And so that's really the point that it begins. And then we can move as we get stability and peace in the body, and we flood it, and it's like, oh my God, I'm getting what I need, and it calms down, and we're becoming more grounded. Then we can open up to the other things that need to happen for healing in the mind and energetic.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think the bio-individual approach to nutrition is the only logical approach. I mean, it's not difficult to believe that we as human beings are all different.
Yes.
And logically, we should need different things. But I would love to sit and chat all day, literally. But I know you have a wonderful free gift for our listeners, and I'm just wondering if you want to share a bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. So we have our E3 Energy Evolve System guide that they can access, and it also has some of our recipes, and I definitely cannot take credit for those. This guy right here is the food artist in our family. So and in there, it kind of introduces them to the system and kind of what's under each level of the system, and how you would start to look at assessing individually in your life, like these different areas that you could work on to begin your healing journey, essentially, and into those levels, your energy in, your energy out, your energy environment. And they could find that at e3energyevolve.com/guide.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so incredibly much for being with us today and sharing your story and your perspective. I'm so inspired by the work you're doing, and I hope our listeners are too.
Thanks, Lynn. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you for having
Thank
us.
you for bringing this conversation
Yeah.
to the forefront.
Fantastic.
My absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
All right. I will see you all on the next video.